Can you be a follower of a specific religion and still support a controversial political leader or policy? This provocative question dominates modern social media feeds, sparking intense debates in comment sections and family group chats alike. It cuts to the core of a growing global fracture regarding how people define their ultimate allegiances. In an increasingly interconnected yet fiercely polarized world, the boundaries between spiritual devotion and civic duty are blurring, forcing voters to ask themselves where their faith ends and their politics begin. The backdrop for this intensifying debate is the complex geopolitical and domestic landscape of 2026. With the U.S. midterm elections bringing heightened partisan rhetoric and ongoing global conflicts challenging international alliances, the God and country debate has reached a boiling point. Across the world, geopolitical instability has left many citizens feeling unmoored, prompting a retreat to foundational identities. For a growing number of people, that foundational identity is deeply rooted in a combination of faith and national pride. At the heart of this discussion lies a fundamental, controversial angle. Is it possible to be a faithful citizen without merging your religion with your political party? This tension is largely framed as a clash between two competing worldviews. Religious nationalism, which seeks to fuse the state with a specific religious identity, and globalism, which generally promotes a secular, interconnected, and pluralistic framework. Both ideologies claim to offer the best path forward for human flourishing, yet their prescriptions for society are fundamentally opposed. Religious nationalism is not merely a sense of patriotism or a casual appreciation for a nation's religious heritage. It is a political ideology asserting that a nation's civic identity should be inseparable from a specific religious tradition. Proponents of this view argue that nations are at their strongest when they are united by a shared moral framework derived from a dominant faith. From this perspective, advocating for religious principles in government is not a violation of democratic norms, but rather a necessary defense of traditional values against the perceived moral relativism of the modern age. In the United States, this phenomenon is most frequently discussed in the context of Christian nationalism. As the 2026 midterms approach, the movement remains a powerful organizing force. Supporters often view the integration of Christian principles into law and public policy as a return to the country's founding ideals, arguing that secularism has eroded the nation's moral fabric. For these voters, supporting political candidates who champion these values is viewed as both a civic duty and an expression of their religious faith. However, religious nationalism is far from a uniquely American phenomenon. It is a robust global trend. In India, Hindu nationalism, Hindutva, has significantly reshaped the country's political landscape, emphasizing Hindu culture as the defining characteristic of Indian identity. Similarly, in Turkey, political leaders have frequently invoked Islamic nationalism to consolidate support and project power, moving away from the strict secularism of the republic's founding era. These global examples demonstrate that the desire to merge religious identity with state power transcends any single faith or geographic region. Conversely, the globalist perspective offers a starkly different vision for the future of governance. In this context, globalism emphasizes international cooperation, secular democratic institutions, and the prioritization of universal human rights over the dominance of any single religious group. Globalists argue that in a diverse and highly connected world, the state must remain neutral on matters of religion to ensure that all citizens, regardless of their belief systems, are treated equally under the law. Critics of religious nationalism, often approaching the issue from a globalist or secular viewpoint, argue that fusing faith and state inevitably leads to the marginalization of minority groups. When a government explicitly aligns itself with one religion, those outside that faith tradition often face systemic disadvantages and social alienation. Furthermore, critics contend that religious nationalism can weaken democratic institutions by prioritizing religious loyalty over constitutional checks and balances, potentially paving the way for authoritarianism justified by divine mandate. Interestingly, some of the most vocal opposition to religious nationalism comes from within the religious communities themselves. Many theologians and devout practitioners argue that merging religion with a political party actually corrupts the faith. They contend that politics is inherently about compromise, power, and earthly governance, whereas faith is meant to be transcendent and pure. By tying a religion to a specific political agenda, critics argue the faith is reduced to a mere tool for partisan gain, alienating seekers and compromising its core spiritual message. This brings the debate back to the central dilemma of the faithful citizen. For millions of voters, entirely separating their deeply held religious convictions from their political decisions feels intellectually dishonest and morally impossible. If a person's faith informs their understanding of justice, compassion, and human dignity, it is only natural that those beliefs will influence how they vote and what policies they support. The challenge, therefore, lies not in silencing religious voices in the public square, but in determining how those voices are expressed. Historically, philosophers and theologians have wrestled with this two kingdoms concept, the tension between the obligations to the earthly city and the heavenly one. A faithful citizen must navigate the mandate to be a good steward of their community while recognizing that no political party perfectly aligns with divine ideals. When allegiance to a political faction supersedes allegiance to spiritual principles, the faithful citizen risks turning a political leader or party into an idol, sacrificing moral consistency for political victory. Modern technology and political polarization have only exacerbated this challenge. Social media algorithms, echo chambers, and the hyperpartisan nature of contemporary media often demand absolute conformity. In this environment, nuanced positions are frequently punished, and voters are pressured to adopt the entirety of a party's platform, even if certain policies conflict with their religious teachings. This creates a false dichotomy, suggesting that one cannot be a true believer without being a loyal partisan. Finding a middle ground requires a commitment to pluralism. It is possible for individuals to let their faith inform their civic engagement without insisting that the state codify their specific religious doctrines. A faithful citizen can advocate for policies that reflect their values, such as poverty alleviation, human rights, or the protection of life, while simultaneously respecting the rights of others who hold different beliefs. This approach champions the influence of religious values in society through persuasion and example, rather than through legislative coercion. As citizens head to the polls for the 2026 U.S. midterm elections, and as international communities navigate ongoing conflicts, this balancing act will be put to the test. Voters are being asked to evaluate not only the economic and foreign policy platforms of their candidates, but also the underlying moral and philosophical visions they represent. The decisions made at the ballot box will serve as a referendum on how comfortable the electorate is with the blurring lines between church, mosque, temple, and state. Ultimately, the debate between religious nationalism and globalism is one of the defining ideological struggles of our time. It asks profound questions about the nature of democracy, the purpose of government, and the true meaning of faith. Whether one believes that religion is the necessary bedrock of a healthy nation or that secularism is the essential shield of a free society, the quest to be a faithful citizen remains a deeply personal and highly consequential journey.